My name is Arthur McKenna, and the cup didn't just fall, it burst. Coffee speckled my boots. The bell over the door went quiet, and a man with a shaved head leaned so close I could smell last night's beer. Places like this aren't made for wheels, he said. His buddy flicked the handle of my chair, a lazy nudge that bounced me against a booth. I kept my hands on the push rims. Training, not pride. Control the small things, hands, breath, voice, so the big things don't own you. Gentlemen, I said, and the word did more work than my tone. I squared the chair and waited. The rusty fork grill smells like butter and strong coffee. Vinyl booths line the wall, red as baseball seams. Marge runs the place the way my mother ran Sunday, firm and fair. She stepped from behind the counter with a dish towel clutched like a flag she refused to wave. Sit and order or keep moving, she told the bikers. Their vests read, Tank, Goose, and Blade. Tank hovered, shadow across my lap. You roll napkins for sympathy tips, Grandpa. In the window our reflections doubled his bulk. My flannel ball cap and the small marine pin I wear for a kid named Keller. I don't wear it for attention. I wear it to remember who I promised to be when the world turns dumb. Goose slapped the service bell and slid into a booth. Blade stretched, taking more space than a man needs. Marge set 3 menus down like a judge dropping files. A few locals pretended to read receipts. A farmer took a very long sip. That's how courage starts in a small town, quiet, unsure, but awake. Fast model tank tapped my wheel. VA put turbo on these. I didn't answer. By the window a boy watched me, the way boys watch weather. Beside him, a man in a worn ball cap with a Desert Storm patch turned his coffee without drinking. The boy whispered Dad, and the man squeezed his shoulder. Tank flicked my cup. It slid found air and slapped the tile. The room went hollow. Oops, he said, smiling with everything but his eyes. Marge snapped, Enough. Her hand hovered near the old wall phone. Then Tank grabbed the push handle behind me. One yank, careless, not cruel, and my casters hopped. My shoulder tapped the booth. I stayed upright because habit keeps a body vertical when dignity gets tested. I rolled forward 6 inches and met Tank's eyes. Sit down, son. I said it like a medic tells a private with a bleeding scalp to breathe, calm, final, no room for another idea. He blinked. What did you say? You heard me. Goose drummed 2 spoons. Old timers got bark. I looked at the boy. I wanted him to see something steadier than the loud men he'd remember tonight. I nodded. He didn't smile, but he sat taller. His father stood stretched like his back had gone tight and walked to the door for air. Passing Tank, he said, Excuse me. Tank moved half a foot, pride grumbling. Outside the July sky was wheat gold. Gravel popped under the man's boots. He took a phone from his canvas jacket, stared at it a second, then put it to his ear and turned his back to the glass. Inside the diner found its small sounds again, the hiss of the flat top, the scrape of a plate, the radio calling balls and strikes. I picked up the broken ear of my cup because it was mine to pick up. Marge handed me a towel. You all right, Art? I'm fine, I said, and meant it. I've learned the difference between pain and inconvenience. The bikers slid into the booth beside my prep station, as if nothing had happened. 3 burgers, extra bacon, Blade told Marge. And whatever Grandpa's drinking. Water, I said. Then make it 2. The boy kept watching. He mouthed a small word, sorry. I let it land where it needed to. His father came back and nodded once and cut the boys' grilled cheese into 4 neat squares, like a ritual meant to keep a day from falling apart. I went back to my bundle knife fork napkin band. In for 4, out for 6. Routine as a fence around panic. Tank snorted like the show had gotten boring. See, he told the others. All bark, he lifted his boots onto the opposite seat. The soles were chewed thin, more telling than the tattoos. 2 tables over, the mail carrier set down his fork. Fellas, he said, gentle, but not weak. Let's keep it decent. Blade grinned. Goose made a kissing sound. The mail carrier looked at me and tipped his chin apology without words. I returned it. Marge poured me a fresh cup on the house. I held the heat to quiet the shake in my hands. Tank watched, hungry for a flinch. I offered none. He leaned closer anyway. You ever see real action, or just the front of a benefits line? Enough, Marge said again, and this time her voice carried to the lot. I thought of Keller, the half-smile, and the habit returned. Hands steady, breath long, patience like a second spine. I looked at Tank's hand, not his face, scar on the middle knuckle, old break crooked as a creek. Men collect stories on the outside when they can't tell the ones inside. The bell didn't ring for a while. When it did, it was a delivery guy with a crate of tomatoes and a straw hat that had seen 3 summers too many. He held the door with his hip and grinned. I grinned back. Sometimes sanity borrows a stranger. Then came an engine outside, ordinary as any motor, but with a certainty I recognized. Some sounds say, a thing has already begun. The boy heard it too. He looked at his dad. The man's mouth barely moved. It's okay, he told him. Help's close. I placed the last bundle on the counter and smoothed the paper band. Tank sighed like a tired actor. Let's eat. He didn't know a stage can change while you're still in the scene. We waited. Sometimes that's the bravest verb a town can manage. I didn't plan on rolling into a scene. I planned on finishing my bundles, paying for coffee, and getting home before the sun slid behind the cottonwoods. That's what most of my days are now, simple shapes I can trace without thinking. A ramp I built with Kenny from the hardware store. 3 shallow steps I still refuse to give up on. Dog waiting at the door. Routine isn't a cage for me. It's a handrail. You earn that after enough noise. I was a medic with 1st Cavalry, 03 and 04. What sticks is odd hot dust, a radio hiss like a snake in tall grass, the dry taste behind your teeth when a helicopter's coming. What didn't stick was my easy stride. A roadside bomb took the muscle memory and left me with wheels. People ask if I'm in pain. Sometimes. Not as much as you think. The ache I know best isn't in my leg. It's the gap between who I was and who the world thinks I must miss every minute. On Tuesdays, I go to the VA 2 towns over. The TV shows, fishing, or court shows. The coffee is as kind as it is terrible. You learn names, nurses, volunteers, a retired school teacher who knits caps for babies she'll never meet. We talk weather more than war. That's not denial. That's how you keep the past from eating the present. I stretch, get my pressure-check trade jokes with a therapist who pretends I'm 35, then drive home slow with the radio low and the windows cracked. When Marge offered me a light job rolling cutlery, wiping the pie case, I said, yes, for the same reason I said yes to hard jobs. It steadies the mind. Work is medicine when you dose it right. I clock in, hang my cap, and count the folded paper bands like rosary beads. Knife, fork, napkin wrap. Set the bundle square. There's a long, low calm and small accuracy. It keeps me from watching the light crawl across my floor as if the day belonged to someone else. The town knows me, the way towns do, not from headlines, but from how often we've waved in traffic. The mail carrier knows I like stamps with old trains. Pastor Ford sends a pecan pie on Thanksgiving. The high school ball players hold the door and call me sir. Most days that's enough. Be decent. Don't make noise you can't clean up. Then there are men who measure themselves in volume. Tank Gooseblade, names picked to be heard across a parking lot. I don't hate them, not even after the cup. Hate's a heavy hobby. What I felt watching them stretch and smirk was like seeing a storm roll over flat land. You don't bargain with weather. You move what you can inside and wait for the first drop. Waiting is easier when you've done your part. That's why I didn't rise to the first insults. It wasn't fear, it was triage. You decide quickly what saves the most. A raised voice would make Marge choose between me and her register. A shove would turn a room of almost courage back into statues. So I made myself small where it mattered, and tall where it counted. Hands gentle, back straight, eyes level. The little boy saw that. I wanted him to. I did think of Keller. Not the blast everyone wants that, but the 5 minutes before when he laughed at a dumb joke about powdered eggs and tightened his helmet without being told. 19 and steadier than men with mortgages. The dog tag I carry isn't a trophy. It's a list of promises with a hole through one end. I rub it with my thumb when old rooms ask me to prove who I was. It tells me to be who I am instead. Evan the father at the window moved like a man who knew the number on the wall phone wouldn't be enough. Patch on his cap, Desert Storm. Another desert, same geometry of danger and pride. He didn't puff his chest. He stepped outside like he needed air and called someone who could change the shape of the afternoon. That matters. The image we leave the young isn't the punch. It's the procession of quiet decisions that prevent punches. Inside, the rhythm returned. I finished a rack of cutlery. Marge refilled salt shakers that didn't need it. Tank kept up the patter because silence makes some men listen to themselves. Goose told a story about a bar fight he didn't win. Blade checked his phone and smirked at nothing. It would have looked silly if not for the cup and the push handle and the small sting of coffee drying on my sleeve. "Hey, Grandpa," Tank said finally. "You see any real action?" "Enough," I said. He waited for more and didn't get it. If words are a fire, you don't hand kindling to a man standing with a match. Out the window, the gravel held light like a promise. When a certain tire rolls over it, the sound is a handful of dry beans in a tin. I heard that, and something in me unclenched. Call it faith. Call it experience. You can tell the difference between arrival and traffic if you've waited in enough motor pools. The boy heard it too. His eyes moved to the door before the bell could. Evan sat up a half-inch taller and slid a tip under his coffee, like he wanted that part handled. Marge put her towel down. The mail carrier's fork paused above a bite. That's the other way towns move together, almost imperceptibly toward the same place. Goose said something about seals being swimmers, and Blade laughed, but his face asked a question his voice couldn't. Tank flexed his jaw. The sound in the lot stopped. Engines have punctuation. This one ended on a period. I wrapped my last bundle and squared it with the others. My hands were steady. My breath was steady. Somewhere a cicada opened its tiny saw against late afternoon. I looked at the boy and gave him the smallest nod. He didn't nod back, but his shoulders found home. The bell didn't jingle. The door opened the way a chapter does when you've read enough pages to deserve it. The door breathed in a stripe of July light, and the whole room seemed to hold it like a lung before the exhale. I didn't turn. I've learned not to give a moment more of my face than it earns. I kept my hands on the rims and my coffee steady. Tank didn't look at the door either. Some men double down when the air changes. He leaned in so close his vest brushed my sleeve. "You hear me, chair?" he said like metal could answer. Goose snorted. Blade tapped his boots against the floor in a rhythm he wanted the room to march to. I let his words pass by the way you let wind pass your hat brim. "You done?" I asked, mild as Sunday after church. He blinked. It's surprising how often a soft question stands a bigger man back on his heels. He wasn't finished, though. He reached for the push handle again, 2 fingers this time, playful the way boys get at the edge of cruelty. The chair jumped an inch. My elbow clipped the booth. Not a big hit. Big enough to put heat up the shoulder. "You will sit down," Marge said. "No, please. No, ma'am." Just the voice she uses on a fryer that spits at her. She wiped her hands on a towel and kept them visible. Her gaze slid past the 3 to catch mine. "Art, no panic in it. Check on the patient without letting him see worry on your face. She's never been a medic, but she knows triage in her bones." "I'm fine," I told her. It wasn't a bluff. Pain and harm aren't the same unit of measure. Goose lifted the service bell and clicked it twice like a toy. "Customer's always right," he said. "Ain't that what they say?" Depends what kind of customer. The mail carrier answered from 2 tables over and then quietly returned to his meatloaf. He didn't have backup. He offered what he could afford. Blade scooted off the bench and wandered toward the counter, all swagger and aimlessness. He made a show of inspecting the pies. "What flavor earns a discount for?" He wiggled his fingers as if searching for a word, vintage warriors. He reached across me and flicked the edge of my napkin roll. 3 bands tumbled to the floor. I didn't grab for them. Picking up the world's small messes is a habit, but sometimes the lesson is in the leaving. You need help with your hands, I asked him. They seem clumsy. He laughed not because it was funny, but because he wanted the sound more than the sense. Look at him, he told Tank. Still got jokes. The boy by the window, Luke, I'd learn later, whispered Dad again. His father, Evan, didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the door, then on me, like measuring the distance between those 2 points mattered more than any word he could choose. He laid a 20 under his cup, squared the edges, like a man who's seen rough days settle when corners are made right. Outside, tires whispered over the gravel and stopped. Engines tell you what kind of men step out. Some idle like they're thinking. Some cut clean the second the key turns. This one settled into quiet the way a man stands at attention. You can call it imagination. I call it training you don't forget. Tank must have heard it too, but pride has poor hearing. Hey, he said, drawing out the vowel you ever wonder why they started letting. He glanced at Goose for approval as if he were auditioning. Old guys run around in uniforms, make the pictures look heroic. I slid one hand off the rim and reached for a napkin. My thumb found the smooth circle of Keller's dog tag through the fabric of my shirt. I wasn't thinking about the blast or the medevac or the night we wrote a letter to his mama that sat too plain on that cheap plywood desk. I was thinking about the 5 minutes before decent jokes, a helmet strap tugged by habit, a kid being a good soldier because someone once told him how to be. That's what steadied me. Not the memory of loss, but the memory of example. Son, I said, because there are times when a man's age isn't his number of years, you're mistaking stillness for weakness. It'll hurt you later, Promise Blade said and grinned. He took 1 step too close. His boot heel slid a napkin band under the caster and the chair nudged forward with a clumsy stumble. My palm missed the rim. The cup tilted. Hot coffee flared over my wrist. Reflex caught up before temper did. I set the cup down hard enough to rattle the saucer. The photo slipped from the wallet tucked in my flannel pocket and sailed to the tile like a dry leaf. I watched it land. My unit lined in a line of dust, the color of baked clay. Faces half in shadow, under helmets. Sleeves rolled someone's head just cut off at the edge of the frame, because PFC Laramie never learned to center. On the back, Keller's handwriting from a day I don't like to revisit. He carried us every time. S's that hook backward, like fishing wire. Blade bent for it, with a performative slowness, like he might hold the picture hostage to the room. I moved faster than he expected. Years of practice can still make a hand quick, and put my palm over the image before his fingers touched it. Our knuckles met. His were scarred. Mine were dry and lined. I didn't raise my eyes. Drop it, I said. He dropped it. Tank snorted. Hero, huh? Not anymore, I said. Now I roll napkins and mind my coffee. You're not very good at that either. Goose offered, nodding at the stain on my sleeve. I'm learning, I said. Every day. Then I tucked the photo back where it belonged and wiped the wet with the back of my other hand. I didn't look down to make sure the floor was clean. I didn't apologize for the mess. That was important. Sometimes you teach by not rushing to erase the evidence of someone else's rudeness. Evan stood. He didn't square up like a challenger. He stepped across like a neighbor. He put 2 fingers on the counter and caught Marge's eye. You need me to call anyone, he asked. Think someone already did, she said. Luke slid off his seat and marched 2 careful steps closer to his dad, like proximity could make him bigger. Is he a soldier? He asked, not small at all. I think he still is, Evan said, and put his hand lightly on the boy's shoulder. The boy looked at me. I gave him the faintest nod. His chin lifted a half inch. No one shouted. No one hurled a grand speech across the room. The radio in the corner called a strike. The delivery guy returned for the empty crate and held the door longer than he needed to, as if time might be contagious. Footsteps on gravel. Boots, not sneakers. The kind of tread that remembers cadence even when it's not required. I kept my eyes on the napkin I was folding and made the edges meet like they'd always meant to. Tank rolled his neck and made a show of yawning. Bored now, he said, but he said it too loud, like his voice needed to fill a space something else had already occupied. The bell over the door didn't ring. Marge oils it twice a year, and it respects her. The door swung inward on the first try. Sunlight drew a clean bar across the floor. 4 shadows stacked in the frame, tall, square, unhurried. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Some arrivals you recognize from the way a room changes shape to meet them. They didn't stomp or swagger. They just entered 4 across like the door had been built to measure them. Dress blues, polished shoes, brass bright enough to borrow the sun. The front man, thin, steady eyes, scanned the room the way a man checks a perimeter, not for a fight, but for where the people were. The second was barrel-chested, older than the others, the kind of shape you earn with years of carrying more than your own kit. The third and fourth took half a step off his shoulders, not quite behind, not quite beside. Every movement tidy. I kept my hands on my rims. I did turn my head. You give respect a face to land on. Staff Sergeant McKenna, the thin one said. His salute rose clean and stopped sharp. He didn't raise his voice. The room did the listening for him. I returned it. My elbow straightened without complaint. The calm that comes with old muscle memory is a luxury you don't realize you still own until you're cashing it in. Lieutenant, I said. Reyes, he offered. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, not quite, and then he turned to the counter. Ma'am, he said to Marge, may we conduct a minute of business in your establishment? Marge folded her towel exactly in half. Long as it ends with everyone still welcome to eat here, she said. That's the only kind we do, he answered. The barrel-chested one chief by the look of him. A corpsman, by the way. His eyes softened when he glanced at my sleeve, drew even with my wheel and gave me a smaller nod, private grade. Doc Hall, he said, lower for me. We shared dust once. Did we? I searched his face and then the calendar in my head. Time erases edges first. He saved me the work. Fallujah, he said. You patched a leak in a man named Sutton and lied about how bad it was so the helo wouldn't waste a second. Sutton lived, I said. He did. A voice behind him answered. Third man, younger than me by half a lifetime. He swallowed and set his shoulders. Petty Officer Sutton now, he said, and looked like he might laugh and cry if the dial in him weren't set to straight ahead. He didn't say thanks. He didn't have to. He stood a little closer than strangers do. It felt like shade. Tank had gone quiet, the way a dog does when it hears a storm it can't locate. Pride is a poor compass. He squared his vest and rolled his neck like his joints could explain him. You folks lost, he said, easy as he could make it. We were just finishing up a conversation with the help. Conversation's over, L.T. Reyes said. It wasn't a threat. It was a line drawn with a carpenter's chalk, clean true. What if we ain't finished? Goose asked. He smiled too wide, which is how you can tell the ground underneath. A man is changing faster than his stance. Chief Hall took one step into their air and let quiet do the rest. Nobody touches one of ours, he said, even as the last consonant barely finished. It's not volume that carries weight. It's history. Blade's eyes bounced from the brass to the boots and back again. He couldn't find the part of the room where he owned the story. Tank did what large men do when the room refuses to make them larger. He reached for a smaller man to hold on to. The smaller men weren't where he left them. Evan the father moved up just enough to be counted. No flex, just presence. The mail carrier put his fork down and set his napkin on his plate, the way a man announces a recess. Pastor Ford, who'd come in without my noticing, stood and took off his cap. The boy by the window rose 2 inches and stayed there chin up like he'd been reminded how. Reyes turned to Marge. We're going to make a few requests, he said. If they're agreeable to you, we'll see to it this afternoon and be gone. Say your piece, Marge told him. He faced the 3. You will apologize to this man. You will pay for the damages you caused and the food wasted. You will leave without another word. And you will arrive at the American Legion tomorrow at 1800 to unload lumber for a ramp build we've scheduled for a veteran's house." He paused. "You will not be late." Or what Tank asked, but he asked it smaller than he meant to. "Or you miss your chance to act like the men you could be," Reyes said. "That's the only penalty that matters today." Goose huffed. "Who made you sheriff?" "Nobody," Chief Hall said, and half a smile found his face. "But we're awfully good at showing up." Blade looked at me. Not at my chair. At me. His lip worried his tooth. He stuck a hand in his pocket, found nothing, took it back out. "Sorry," he said, and his voice startled him by sounding like his mother could hear it. "Say it to him," Reyes told him. Blade faced me like light makes you squint. "Sorry," he said again, eyes meeting mine this time. He looked less dangerous that way. He looked young. Goose followed. "Didn't mean—" He trailed off. Men who live on noise don't rehearse the quiet words. "Sorry," he finished and let the last letter hang. Tank stayed for last. He outweighed me by a me and a half. He'd practiced menace until it came to him without effort. Confession is heavier than menace. He tried to lift it anyway. "I was out of line," he said, and the words hit the floor and stayed there, which is where truth belongs. He shifted uncomfortable in a body that suddenly seemed too honest to wear. "I got an uncle in a chair," he added almost to himself. "I should have known better." "You do now," I said. I didn't offer to make it easier. Dignity isn't free. It pays for itself. Marge slid a towel across the wet spot I hadn't bothered to wipe. "You're buying the house coffee today, boys," she told the three like the decision had been on the menu all along. "And you'll come back tomorrow with work gloves, or you'll find your appetites don't fit in here anymore." "Yes, ma'am," Blade said. Goose nodded. Tank kept his eyes on the towel a second, then lifted them. Evan stepped to the register and laid a few bills down. For the cup, he said quietly. Reyes put a credit card on top of those and slid it forward with 2 fingers. "For all of it," he said to Marge. "And for the wall of service you're going to build on that back wall. We can help with frames." Marge looked at the card, then at him. "You're planning my decor now." "Ma'am," he said, and the almost smile returned. "Only if you want it." She let the towel rest on her shoulder. "I might," she said, "if he's in the middle." She tipped her chin at me. "Middle's crowded," I told her. "We can share." The boy eased forward like his feet had thought of it before he did. "Sir," he said to me. I turned my chair so I didn't have to look up too far. "Were you scared?" he asked. "Of what I said?" He looked at my sleeve, at the stain, at the men. "All of it." "Yes," I said, because some answers should never teach the wrong lesson. "And no. The trick is, son, you do the right thing scared. The fear doesn't get a vote." He nodded like that line would fit in a pocket. Evan's hand found his shoulder again. You could see the bloodline in the gesture, and also something adopted how men lend steadiness to boys they're still teaching to spell the word. Chief Hall cleared his throat. "You still rolling those Tuesday mornings at the VA?" he asked me. "When I can," I said. "We stop in," he said. "Coffee's bad there too. Brings back the old days." "Bad coffee's the common language," I said. That got me a real smile. Sutton took a breath like he'd been holding it since he spoke. "Sir," he said, "You're welcome," I told him before he found the rest. His mouth closed. Relief sits strange on young faces. They expect penance to be part of the exchange. It isn't, not always. Reyes squared himself with the 3 again. "You will be at the Legion," he said. He didn't repeat the time. He didn't need to. "We'll be there," Tank said, and because the room was listening, he added, "We'll be on time." "Good," Reyes said. He turned to me once more. "Permission to check in next week," he said, and the formal words warmed the air more than any "how you doing" ever could. "Granted," I said. They turned to go. Boots on tile, a sound I will never stop counting, fell into that unison that human beings find when they've made the same promises to themselves. Reyes paused at the threshold and looked at the boy. Nice posture, he told him. Keep it. Yes, sir, the boy said and tried to stand even straighter without moving his feet. When the door shut, the bell remembered to jingle. The light on the floor broke into smaller pieces and scattered back into the room where it belonged. People remembered their forks. Breathing resumed. Tank stared at the money on the counter and then at me. Tomorrow, he said, like he needed to hear himself say it again. Tomorrow, I echoed. He nodded just once, not to me, so much as to whatever man inside him would make sure his boots found the Legion steps at 5:59. Then he gathered his vest together like a man collects a coat he's learned might be out of season, and the three of them left without bumping a single chair. Marge leaned on the counter and let out a breath with her whole body. Well, she said, that was a lot of heat for a Thursday. Could have been worse, I said. Could have been better, she countered. But look at us. Stove still on, coffee still, terrible door still works. That's a restaurant. That's a town, I said. The mail carrier raised his glass of water. To tomorrow, he said. To tomorrow, the room answered soft but together. I picked up the next napkin and smoothed the crease. The stain on my sleeve dried into nothing. Outside, a lawnmower started up 3 houses over and sang a flat note against the evening like a hymn everyone knows. They showed up at 5:58. Work boots, not swagger. No vests, just t-shirts and caps pulled low like they didn't trust the weather yet. Tank carried a box of screws under one arm and a nervousness he tried to hide with a grin. Goose wore gloves too big for his hands. Blade had a tape measure around his neck and the look of a man who wanted to do something he couldn't undo with his mouth. The Legion Hall smelled like coffee and pledge, and the parking lot was a scatter of pickups with Union stickers and faded unit decals. A flag lifted off the pole like it was stretching. I rolled out from the shade and nodded like a neighbor. Reyes was already there, sleeves rolled pencil behind his ear. Chief Hall sorted 2x6s, humming tunelessly. Sutton stacked bags of quick retail like they weighed less than his thoughts. No one gave a speech. Reyes clapped his hands once and divided the pile into tasks that made sense. Cut, set, secure, check. It's a good sound when a Saturday finds its purpose. Our chief said, tapping the plan with a blunt finger, "You want slope at 1 in 12 or friendlier?" "Friendlier," I said. "The winters here grow ice like it's their job." He grunted approval disguised as weather talk and marked a line a half-inch shy of a regulation no one would police. The first boards fell into a shape that looked like welcome. Tank's eyes kept flicking toward me, the way a man peeks at the clock when he doesn't want to be caught counting. He tried a joke and let it die in the dust between his boots. "Where you want me?" "Backfill and tamp," Reyes said, handing him a hand tamper. Strong shoulders helped there. He said it like a compliment a man could stand inside. Goose set post serious for once, tongue pressed to his lip like a boy doing long division. Blade read the bubble in the level and made the kind of small adjustments that change whether a thing feels safe underfoot or not. We worked with the economy of people who've been embarrassed by inefficiency before. Sweat got honest. The morning found its rhythm. An older man with a Korean war cap brought out lemonade with more sugar than a doctor recommends, and less than a grandchild demands. He set the tray down and stood beside me, not too close. "Name's Cal," he said. "I don't shake so good anymore." He lifted a tremoring hand 2 inches off the rail and set it down again. "Thank you for yesterday." "I didn't do much," I said. "You were still," he said. "Some of us needed the example." He didn't look at the 3 men measuring their morning against a task that wasn't about them. He didn't have to. Evan and Luke arrived with a box of bolts and blueberry muffins in a pan that looked like it had seen 50 summers and 1 day of sorrow for every one of them. Luke marched straight to me like distance was cowardice. "Sir," he said, more sure than yesterday. "I can help. I measured 6 times. Dad said that's not necessary, but it made me feel better." "Measure 7, I told him, and his smile broke straight across his face. By noon, the frame was set. The decking went down like notes in a hymn. Everybody knows, even if they haven't been to church in years. Reyes checked screws without making anyone feel watched. Chief ran his palm along the rail, feeling for splinters like a medic looks for heat. Sutton brought the hose because water's the cure for half the problems a short summer creates. Tank tamped like he had something to prove to gravity. He did. It listened. We took lunch on the tailgates. Ham sandwiches wrapped in wax paper apples bruised at the top. Lemon slices floating in a cooler that had outlived 2 marriages. Blade sat one tailgate over from me and didn't meet my eyes until he was ready. I said. Sorry, he said, picking at the crust. I know that doesn't, It's a start, I said. My uncle, he began. Then shut the door behind the rest of the sentence like it was a dog that would run. He fell last month. We didn't have a ramp. I said I'd build one. I watched videos. Then I didn't. I went out instead. He looked at his boots. I don't know why I'm telling you that. Because men tell the truth when their hands are busy, I said. And because you don't want to be the kind of person who keeps a promise to a bar, but not to a person. He nodded, honest enough to hurt. Yeah. Goose chewed slowly, listening like he hadn't intended to. My grandma's place has 3 concrete steps, he said. I never thought about it until yesterday. Feels bad to say that out loud. It feels worse to keep quiet, Evan said from the other end of the tailgate. He raised his water. To the things we think about late and finally do early. We drank to that. Water tastes better when it follows work. After lunch, the last boards went down. The sound of screws seeding into wood is miniature thunder, the kind that promises rain to a garden. Luke handed me the first roll across the new slope. Quality control, he said in a voice half an octave lower than last week. I put my palms on the rims and let the chair follow the line those men had laced together. It was smooth, a little generous at the bottom, where a turn might get tight, exactly what we'd sketched with sweat and a carpenter's pencil. The small crowd clapped the way a town applauds when it recognizes itself. Tank wiped his forearms and tried back his old grin. It didn't fit right anymore. He set it down. You need anything else, Sarge? He caught himself. Art. The correction cost him something and bought him more. Yeah, I said. There's a diner with a back wall that needs frames. Marge had them ready. By late Sunday, thrift store finds burnished to same. Monday morning, the rusty fork was busy with quiet, the good kind. Evan mounted the anchors. Chief squared each frame with a carpenter's right angle, satisfied when the bubble floated true. Reyes centered brass nameplates we'd ordered the night before, wall of service at the top. Beneath it, photos uniforms, old and new, smiling and solemn, some in color, some in the hard gray of an age that didn't know saturation. Cal brought his from 1953, soft at the corners, and holy the way paper can get when it's carried near a heart. Tank hovered with a hammer he didn't quite trust. Here, he said, and handed it to Luke. You line it up. My hands still remember bad habits. Luke tapped in a finish nail with a concentration that suggests a future unbent by jokes. Blade found the old bell and rehung it at a height that makes sense to a person sitting down. Goose sanded the rough edge on a table that had snagged 3 sweaters this year. Marge replaced the chalkboard menu with a hand-painted sign someone's niece made in a script that would have been too pretty for us last week and felt right now, where we carry each other. We didn't ban the bikers. We didn't need to. They showed up for coffee and pie cash on the counter, caps off voices at the volume that says, I know where I am. Tank brought his uncle 2 days later. The man's hands shook. His eyes didn't. He rolled across the threshold without scraping his knuckles and let his breath out where people could hear it. Smooth, he said, and patted the rail. Tank blinked 3 times like sawdust was in the air. I won't tell you the town changed in a day. It didn't. The mail carrier still eats meatloaf on Thursdays and folds his napkin like he's apologizing to linen. Some afternoons I still feel the old ache in the seam where bone meets memory. But there's a ramp at the Legion now that wasn't there before. There's a wall that tells the truth without shouting. There's a bell at the right height and a boy who learned posture from a lieutenant. and 3 men who learned silence can be stronger than noise if you pair it with a hammer. If you're listening to this and you've got an old promise rattling around in your glove box, call the Legion, the church, the neighbor with the stubborn steps. Ask what needs doing. Don't wait for better men to walk through your door. Be one with whatever hands you've got. And if you've got a veteran in your life, call tonight. Don't ask them for the story they don't want to tell. Ask them what time they like their coffee and how they take it. Show up with a cup that tastes like decency. Sit. Let the quiet do its work. If this meant something to you, share it with someone who needs the reminder that mercy isn't weakness, that respect doesn't depend on appearances, and that communities don't get better by shouting. They get better by showing up.